let's talk about one of the possible explanations for this. The idea that Stephen Paddock was not a lone wolf shooter who sat around a casino gambling away his life savings. He was, in fact, a fairly successful international arms trafficker. So, to begin with these discussions here, again, we'll revisit those crime scene photos of all the guns strewn around. Like, that is not the average enthusiast's gun collection. I believe when they raided his properties, they found over 90 firearms combined across his houses, places he rented, and the hotel room. The average gun enthusiast is not going to have a collection quite like that. But who would have something like that is someone who is demoing products for sale to people that he, is calling up and having meetings with. So, the career history of this guy is really what makes this interesting. But first, I want to play this clip of bump stocks, because a lot of people have a misunderstanding about what it is that makes a bump stock function. Do you guys know anything about
Zero
those?
idea.
Okay. So,
For me.
So you know the difference between an automatic and semi-automatic weapon. Semi-automatic, one trigger pull, one bullet. Automatic, hold the trigger down, continuous stream of bullets until the magazine is empty. What a bump stock does is take a semi-automatic weapon and make it function like an automatic one. Ish. They're not always reliable, but a reasonably functional bump stock allows the weapon to slide back and forth against your shoulder within the stock, which basically makes it bounce against your finger. Makes it function like an automatic.
You're bumping the trigger.
You're bumping the trigger while holding your finger stationary. Here's a video of a guy demonstrating one, and you can see that the sound of the rate of fire coming out of this AR-15 does actually sound somewhat similar to what we heard at the Route 91 Harvest Festival.
Merry Christmas to me.
Now, the gun's smoking because of it's firing in such rapid succession. I've never fired a gun, but from what I've heard, when you do fire a gun, it can be a strain on your muscles. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, especially when
kickback.
it's automatic or high rate of fire like that.
Stephen Paddock didn't look like he was in the best shape. Do you guys find it unrealistic, or realistic, I guess, that a guy of his age and shape is able to fire off 1,100 rounds without fatiguing?
I certainly find it questionable, because to keep up that rate of fire for that long with any sort of accuracy, because you see, as even this guy who appears to be some sort of trained shooter knows how he's handling the gun, the longer you hold down that trigger, the higher up the barrel gets.
So you're actually fighting against the opposite of gravity because it's going up. So you're trying to arm it and hold it down.
Yes, the recoil wants to pull you back and send the barrel up. You have to force it down.
Okay.
So a guy of Stephen Paddock's age and shape, it's questionable whether he could have sustained that. And then to be able to accurately hit people from that far away, again, would require a very advanced level of marksmanship.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but some of these guys have been around firearms for a long time. They have a lot of muscle memory on them. Okay. Like, firing a bump stock is not easy. Like, for example, it's funny that he says, Merry Christmas to me. So he probably bought the bump stock and it was showing off for the video. And you can tell he's not very skilled with it, but there's some guys on the internet that are really good with the bump stock.
Yeah. So let's first take a look, now that we've established the bump stocks and the oddities about some of the guns, the claim that Stephen Paddock made $5 million gambling at these casinos. This is where it's a little bit tricky, because you can't win $5 million off a Vegas casino. It's essentially impossible with how these are set up to negate their losses. And they did the math, and for this to have been possible, requires losing more than $5 million for the payout of $5 million. But he was a known high roller at several casinos where he'd show up and he'd get rooms comped, he'd get free drinks, he'd get all kinds of service because he spent so much money there. For someone who doesn't really seem to have much of an employment history and no explanation for where he made his money, this doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you are an international arms trafficker who has made a bunch of money, millions upon millions of dollars from illicit weapons sales, and you are trying to launder that money into your account, this makes perfect sense. You take all your gun money to a Vegas casino, you convert it into chips, or different tokens for games. You play the games, and then whatever money you lose, that's just the cost of doing business. You get that money paid back out. The machines he was known to use at the Mandalay Bay specifically have different reporting standards for what's required to be reported to the IRS. And that means that under a certain amount, you don't have to make a full report. So the money comes back to him. And if he loses a few $100,000 on it, who cares? He's getting the payout of his own money brought back to him.
But now it looks like it's legal
Yes,
money.
now it's just inexplicable casino winnings that is hard stopped against the machine he won it off of.
Gotcha.
So the IRS cannot trace him. But let's look at his career history, because this is what makes it really suspicious. Here's a Fox News report from that time. Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock had government jobs and bought 33 weapons last year. This was, of course, written just days after the shooting. Investigators pieced together 64-year-old Stephen Paddock's life and found that he worked for the Internal Revenue Service and as an auditor for defense contracts. But Paddock apparently started his government service via a far more humble route, working 2 years as a letter carrier for the U.S. Postal Service from 1976 to 1978. That appears to overlap with his time at Cal State Northridge, from which he graduated in 1977. And goes on to say Paddock was
So as a
an
college
auditor.
student, he's working as a postal service employee.
Yes.
But we're now about the post office.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's as government as it gets.
Yeah, especially
That's
those
the original
times.
CIA. Don't mess with
and
the post office.
They used to call. Okay, so it does fit the narrative. Remember, the term "going postal" came from in the early '90s, late '80s. There were rashes of postal workers shooting up the post offices that they worked at. So it's nothing new that a postal employee goes nuts. The difference is this guy also worked for the CIA after working for the post office.
Remember
Yes.
what Newman said.
And one of the companies
Mail
he
keeps
worked
coming,
for,
it never stops.
one of the companies he worked for was a defense contractor that went on to become the predecessor of Lockheed Martin. It was one of the groups that was merged together to form the current company we know as Lockheed. And what makes this so suspicious is Stephen Paddock's family background. Because who was Stephen Paddock's father? If we can put this up, Stephen Paddock's father, Benjamin Hoskins Paddock, was a notorious bank robber who was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list after escaping prison in 1968. He was on the run for almost a decade before he was caught. And anyone who has had a government job knows the rigorous background checks these people go through. We had to get extensively background checked to work here. And
did?
we don't do government stuff at all. I mean,
I
maybe
believe I passed that.
yeah, exactly. So if people like Rob are questionable and setting off background checks, how does a guy get secure clearance at defense contractors when his father is a known bank robber who was on the FBI's most wanted list? That should have set off all kinds of flags.
That's
What
how
ye-
they like him. Go ahead.
No, what year was his dad on the run from?
He escaped prison in 1968, and I believe he was on the run until 78.
1968. And when did Stephen Paddock start working for the government? He started as a postal employee in
76 and worked there till 78.
And then where'd he go after that?
He was an IRS agent from 78 to 84, and then from 84 to 85 was working with defense contractors.
So you could chalk up 76 to 78-ish as, okay, well, maybe the postal office, it doesn't matter that much, your background, whatever, you're carrying letters, who cares? But when it gets to IRS and he was working as an auditor
Yes.
for the IRS, I would think that, like you said, there's a different set of background checks that you have to go through. How in the world are they hiring someone whose father is currently on the run? How does think about this? That'd be like if someone stole money from the company that we work for. And then their brother came and worked for the company that we worked for while we were in the process of suing the person that stole money from us. We wouldn't hire that person. If the federal government is looking for your father and he's one of the most wanted men in the world, in the United States, you're going to hire that guy's son?
Even if
no
he-
questions asked?
Even if the son did nothing wrong, it still sets off enough red flags to where you assume the government would not want any part of it. But as it turns out,
I bet the IRS loved it. A
the
bank
government-
robber, they're
yeah.
running the same
government
line.
might have wanted a lot of Stephen Paddock because this was a thing. And again, credit to Coop for flagging this because I had never seen this before. This was flashed on screen briefly during a local news broadcast talking about letters that were received that were addressed to Stephen Paddock and recovered at his residences. One of them was this one, addressed to a guy named Jim Nixon, who appears to be an ex-con that Stephen Paddock was friends with. The person who wrote it, Albert Stockton, it's a little bit unclear who this guy is right now. But in the letter, it says, please note I've been working with Mr. Paddock for the past several years, and I believe he will be the ideal accountant investor for your business. Steve has a unique accounting practice, and he is very professional, not to mention honest. 15 years with the CIA. He is funny and will keep you happy as long as you are his client. So this was first disclosed by being flashed very briefly on screen. But this is a letter that allegedly was found within Stephen Paddock's documents, in which an associate says this guy worked for the CIA for 15 years.
Do we have a date on that letter by any chance? It'd be very interesting. What I'm trying to figure out is if the timeline of Stephen Paddock working for the CIA overlaps with the timeline that the government was trying to find his father.
Because 1985.
Is there a date on top? Like
Yes, March 19th, 2014. If I'm reading that correctly.
2014.
Yeah,
So
March.
if it's saying, okay, he previously worked for the CIA for the last 15 years, then that would take you back to what, 89?
Yes. So in 85, he is working.
No, I'm sorry, 99.
No, in 85, he works for a defense contractor, the one that becomes Lockheed Martin. Okay. And then his employment history just drops off the radar, and we have no idea what this guy spent the next 30 years doing. But somehow, in that 30-year period, he became a multimillionaire who took elaborate cruises, often to the Middle East, and was a high roller at multiple Vegas casinos. Where did this guy get his money from? And no one has been able to give us a concrete answer about that.
Well, defense contractor in 85 makes you think of Iran-Contra, and that's what Epstein and Khashoggi were all involved in, and then
Adnan Khashoggi,
Yes.
the father of Jamal Khashoggi,
uncle,
who got
I think.
murdered.
Yeah.
who was butchered inside of the consulate. Was it in Turkey? Where they chopped him up, put his body into a suitcase, and then wheeled him out.
shortly
sent the video.
after this, right?
And it's no coincidence that took place, because the Saudis have their fingerprints all over this entire situation. We will touch on that shortly. But guys, what level of credibility do you give to the idea that Stephen Paddock was in that hotel for a weapons deal based on what we've discussed? Where are your minds right
Leaning
now?
more towards that than the guy just was angry at country music fans and decided to open fire and just kill indiscriminately.
I mean, the problem is that the guy on the corpse doesn't appear to be Stephen Paddock's, and the crime scene looks like it was set up to look like a crime scene. Like, it's almost kind of silly how it was set up. Like, why is there guns just like sitting on bar stools and like laid out all over the place?
It's like if you took a box of guns and just
Threw 'em.
dumped them.
Yeah.
And then the type of guns, like if you look at the pictures, like a gun enthusiast wouldn't use those guns. Like they will probably bring something fancier. They seem like, I mean, in my thinking after watching all this and reading about it, I'm leaning towards the arms deal, all right? Because that's the type of bulk guns that you will sell. Maybe, I don't know.
And if you're unconvinced, how about
But why not
some
go
of
to like a
this?
freaking like a moving container or something, like those pods where you do storage?
What do you
or
think?
something?
It's a movie, Brandon?
I'm thinking he's a smart guy if he's gotten along all this. Like, why would you do it in that inefficient of a way where you have to bring up all these bags and like that doesn't seem like a smart place to do an arms
Well,
deal.
nobody caught him until he started shooting.
It's kind of an open secret that Las Vegas is like one of the leading destinations for illegal weapons trafficking around the world.
Right,
Like,
but-
people fly into Vegas and they meet in hotels and they negotiate weapons deals. They don't often have, heavy ordnance in the hotel room with them, but people go there to negotiate these things off the books all the time.
It's not just weapons dealings. Not that I have any experience with this, but one of the Uber drivers when I was in Vegas the last time for work was telling me about the amount of people that are sex trafficked through Las Vegas specifically. It's a hub for all of this, for weapons, for drugs, and for human victims.
No, it turns out the place
started.
calls itself Sin City and prostitution is legal. Who'd have thunk that
The bad things would happen.
all the worst things happen in Las
Well, it
Vegas?
was literally built by international crime syndicates. Like, Vegas was built by the original Italian and Jewish mafias. Like they used
With union money.
Yeah, with the Union Pension Fund that built Vegas. So it was like a way to build money laundering facilities for their dirty money.
Yeah.
And what we think? Do we think just like good corporate people took it over at some point?
And the money laundering thing is a classic. Like it's the most popular way to launder your money.
The only thing more popular would be like a coin laundry.
Yeah,
essentially.
coin laundry or like an Asian massage.
Yeah,
like
but
in
the
Better Call
volume
Saul.
you could do at a casino
Yeah.
versus a laundromat.
I guarantee you, if you were to cut out the money laundering proceeds from Vegas casinos, they'd be bankrupt in a year.
Yeah, well, the government, remember, like they said in 2008 that drug money was the thing that kept the economy afloat when the banks crashed.
Yeah, what are we thinking? These places are held aloft by boomers on penny slots. Like that's not how this works.
It's window
They're
dressing.
failing though. They're
Yeah,
failing.
yeah. Vegas is dying, and honestly,
I'm gonna miss
perhaps
it.
good riddance. But if you're unconvinced still that Stephen Paddock might have had more going on than just a guy who happened to be some kind of gun enthusiast, how about this? Unsealed FBI warrants show Paddock emailing about trying AR-15s and, quote, for a thrill, trying a bump stock AR with an 8 or 100 round magazine. That sounds more like marketing than it does some guy who's talking to himself. When they said, oh, he might have been emailing himself from different accounts. Who sends themselves an email about trying a bump stock for a thrill? That's how you market to clients. Then at the same time, after the shooting, ammonium nitrate and a significant amount of tannerite, both of which are explosives, were found in his car and in various properties, which means he was handling explosive ordnance, not just hobbyist guns. So this guy might have been, trafficking in more than just rifles.
All right, so the question becomes, if you bring all of that stuff, you're going to conduct the worst mass shooting in United States history. You bring supplies to build a bomb. You have all of the time in the world because you've been in the hotel for 5+ days. Why didn't he use the bomb-making components found inside of his vehicle to construct a bomb and set it off? Unless you're there to sell it to somebody else, why would you be bringing weaponry that you don't plan on using for this deadly attack?
Also, why would you load up with over 500 or like 5,000 rounds of ammunition, but then off yourself after getting off 1,000? Like he had enough loaded weapons to make an even bigger death toll. He could have kept going. He killed himself before the police even breached the door.
But question, do you think that's Paddock, though? Do you think that was Paddock?
No, I think all of these signs indicate that this guy was here to sell things and brought demos of his products to show people in the hotel rooms, probably had some explosives there for the same thing, and then this shooting kicked off around it.
But was that body Paddock, do you think?
I am unsure. I tried to look at some of the corpse photos, but honestly,
There's very few,
there's very few, and honestly, after recent events, there's only so much of corpses with half their heads blown off that I'm actually in the mood to stomach during a work day.
Yep.
But I'm willing to do that for all of you watching at home. Thank you for the nightmares. But there's certainly those things about the corpse that are odd.
Well, because it's
I agree.
Paddock seems like he was part of the network, part of the network that does these things. So, why would they make somebody that's their own be a patsy?
Mm-hmm.
And, the corpse would indicate that wasn't him. So, did he start the process of an arms deal and then they put somebody else in there and they just used his identity as the person? And then, what was actually accomplished by doing this? If it was a false flag, what is the thing that was accomplished? Who benefited from it? And there is some stuff about some things that are trying to be pushed through. I don't want to, jump ahead too much, but do you feel like you have a good sense of what was accomplished for a certain person or group?
I believe so. I believe that we're all kind of on the same page about that.
So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.